want to share with you a pasuk in this week's Parsha, in Va'etchanan. The pasuk says, Ve'ata Yisrael. Now, listen, Jewish people. Shema el achukim ve'el mishpatim. Listen to these edicts and to the laws. Asher nochim lamed eschem lasos, that I'm going to command you to do. Laman techyu v'asem rishtem es haaretz. In order that you should live and you should be able to come in and inherit the land that I'm giving you. That Hashem is giving you. Lo sosiv al hadavar asher nochi mitzaveh eschem. Do not add to any of the words that I am commanding you. V'lo sigru mimenu. And do not detract from them. L'shmor es mitzvos Hashem Elokeichem. To guard the words of Hashem, the mitzvahs that He's given you. Asher nochi mitzaveh eschem. Asher nochi mitzaveh eschem. Those words that I am commanding you. So Hashem tells us, Moshe is saying that Yisrael. Now listen. What now? What now than before? Now I want you to listen to the mitzvahs that I'm telling you. And not only that, lo tosifu, do not add and do not detract. So these two mitzvahs are the concepts of Baal Tigra and Baal Tosif, or Baal Tosif and Baal Tigra. Baal Tosif is the concept of adding to a mitzvah. Baal Tigra is the concept of taking away from a mitzvah. So the obvious question is, taking away from a mitzvah, it seems pretty obvious. You didn't do a mitzvah. So if I tell you to, let's say, put on tefillin, and your tefillin is not fully there, it's missing half its parts, well, you didn't fulfill the commandments that Hashem has given you. But why is it that if I add to a mitzvah, that I'm actually not fulfilling it? Basically, as the Kli Yakar presents the question, if I have, let's say, four-corner garment, and I put tzitzis on, and then I add a fifth, hey, but guess what? At least I have four, so shouldn't that fulfill it anyway? So this is his question that he presents. So what he's telling us the following. First thing is, the Torah tells us that you might think that you're fulfilling a mitzvah, even though you're adding to that mitzvah itself. So the example Rashi gives, you add an extra parchment into your tefillin. You think you're adding, you think you're just doing more. The fact is, if you're doing something that's not the way prescribed by Hashem, then at that point, you've actually not done anything, you've taken away from it. So the Kli Yakar's approach is by adding, lo tosifu, by you adding, you're actually taking away. You think you understand what that means, that Hashem has given you a particular mitzvah, you can add to it. This will present the obvious question of chumras. How is there a chumrah attached to anything? Because doesn't that chumrah mean that I'm adding to a mitzvah? That's not for now, but that's the obvious question that comes from it. But the commentaries present over here that when you have a case of, let's say, Baal Tigra, you detract from a mitzvah, what that means is you think that the mitzvah is no longer applicable, or certain parts of that mitzvah are no longer applicable. Why? Because the meaning behind the mitzvah is not applicable. Therefore, the Torah tells us, don't do a mitzvah or not do a mitzvah because of the meaning behind it. You do it the way Hashem has given it to you. And when it comes to Baal Tosif, when it comes to adding to a mitzvah, you might actually think that by adding, you're doing a little bit better, you're doing a little bit more, but the fact is, what ends up happening is, Kol HaMosif Goreya. Anyone who adds to these things, who thinks that he is creating a new Torah, thinks that he's doing a better job than what Hashem is telling him to do, and that scenario, that is considered Goreya. These are two different mitzvahs that we have, Baal Tosif and Baal Tigra. They are applicable in our times, where you might do things to add to particular mitzvahs or take away from them. Here the Torah is telling you, don't do these things. If you do these things, you end up losing both ways. Rabbi Nachi Klein